Hey, radio fans, welcome to the Last Angry DJ, show number 69. And we're looking forward to our guest who's coming on today. We talk about all kinds of fun stuff. And it's nice and warm here on the east coast of the US of A. It's pushing 100 degrees. So hopefully wherever you are, it's a little less temperature, maybe a little less humidity and all that kind of stuff. We're going to have some fun doing things that we like to do, especially all around broadcasting today, about broadcasting music, about radio, old stories, new stories. And it's all brought to you by our good friends at Arby's. You know, Arby's, where they've got the meats. And they also have a great app where you can sign on and get specials and BOGOs. And BOGOs, buy one, get one free, just so you don't say, in case you don't know. So Arby's is our kind sponsor for the show. Let's move things along. I'd like to introduce my producer and cohort, Mr. Alexander Knight. Hello, Alex.
Good to be here, Mitch, for episode 69 of The Last Angry DJ. This is the show where we interview luminaries in the world of broadcast, YouTube, content creators, podcasters, all that kind of stuff. This is a show where we like to say it intersects the old media versus new media, but unlike Iron Chef, it's not about whose industry reigns supreme. It's about discussing the ongoing challenges that we're all facing with the work that we do and with the content that we're creating. And I'm really excited about today's guest, but before we get to our guest today, I'm going to kick it off to Mark Giuliani, who's an integral part of our panel. How's it going, Mark?
Alex, how are you? It's good to be here. We have a great guest. We got a number of questions lined up, and we want to have more questions so I can read them. But Mitch, take it away.
Thank you, Mark. Mark is our poster boy for broadcast ownership. You can tell that he used to have a full head of hair before he started in the radio business. Now things have changed. So, Mark, thanks to have you here. Alex, as always, great to have you as our producer. I'm very pleased to introduce our next guest, who has deigned to come on. See, I'm trying to use those big words now. Deigned to come on the show at the recommendation of a friend of show, Ray Quinn. And it's Jeff Lynn, who works with Barrett Media. Sorry about that, Jeff. I've screwed up the intro already. We can't do a take two on a live show. It's all the fun. But it's great to have you here. And I just want to, first of all, I'm glad to have a radio guy that's obviously been on almost as long as I've been. So we're representing the early days of radio and what's cool. And also somebody that represents a lot of what's going on at the big boys out there in broadcasting. We talk a lot about them. We sometimes pick on them a little bit, but I think you could speak well for all of those companies, Barrett included. Where do you basically come from, and what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, Barrett Media has been anchored in sports and news coverage for several years now. Jason Barrett is a very well-known and esteemed sports radio consultant, programmed a lot of stations, San Francisco, St. Louis, and so forth. And about a year ago, he decided that he wanted to take Barrett Media and Barrett News and bring in music into the fold too. So instead of operating a Barrett Media website and a Barrett News website, he brought it all together under one umbrella for the three. I had been working as the country music editor for All Access out of Nashville, and unfortunately,
our good friend Joel Denver.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we know that that had to close down, and the timing was right. And Jason and I got together, and he said, "Hey, I'm looking for a music radio editor," and that's where I came into the picture when they launched the site almost a year ago to the day. Right now, when we launched music, so. That's where I've been. What I do is I head up a team of writers, feature writers, and columnists that explore different formatics. Like Keith Cunningham is our rock guy, Kevin Robinson's our AC guy, and so on and so forth. And then myself, I write a weekly column in the country world, and also manage the news part of it, and write features about programmers and on-air shows.
So your customers or consumers of your content you create are radio stations. Who else is consuming your media?
Well, we want it to be radio stations. We want it to be DJs in the studios. We want it to be programmers, but we also like to try to target a lot of stuff to the C-suite as well. Whereas, if we can put out, if Keith Cunningham, for instance, puts out a kind of a how-to on a classic rock, that hopefully that not only does that get into the station, but can get to the C-suite as well. And we, that's where we really hope to get into everybody.
Okay, that's cool. And you've been at this how long now?
Well, like I said, we've been almost a year to the day that we've been doing this. Myself, I've been, my first full-time job in radio was around 1991, so I'm showing the age a bit here.
You're a young'un.
But I've been around it all that time in radio, dabbled briefly out of college in television, which was not something that I really liked that much. I've done programming for virtually every format, including spoken word, and the only one I haven't been in is Christian, which is red hot right now, and I have nothing against it. It just never worked out for me to be in that. I've had the opportunity to launch some great brands for companies, and now just kind of sit back and kind of take it all in and aggregate the content and push it back out for them, and hopefully it's helpful.
Yeah, why do you think things like All Access had to fold up their carpet and move on? By the way, Joel's a friend of shows, so we're not here to bash him, but
No.
Obviously some things have changed in the business. What are those changes?
One of the changes was the shrinking of the record labels, where the business we were doing with Universal and Warner and stuff, which was a much of a bedrock of a company, which if you remember how the All Access site looked, there were a lot of skyscrapers and banner ads and such, and when they decided they were going to cut back and go a different direction with their marketing and advertising, Joel had a huge staff, and that took a big hit into it, and unfortunately, it just wasn't sustainable anymore. And there were so many broken-hearted people, and myself included, when that happened. Not just because I was working there, but because All Access had been such a mainstay in the media for so long, for 29 years, and to see it go away was sad. But it really was the labels cutting back on their marketing money.
Sure. And, it's interesting when I think back as a young music director in AM radio back in the 70s, how many sheets were out there or papers that had a lot to do, like Friday Morning Quarterback with Cal Rudman, Bobby Poe, Fred, which I guess is a precursor to R&R. Others, Cashbox and Billboard.
Bill Gavin, yeah.
Bill Gavin. Gavin's the blue sheet of paper that we'd get from Gavin. Gavin Reports, I guess it was. So it's kind of shrunk to the major All Access, which Joel eventually took over when he left R&R. And now we're at a point where I guess information and the use of information is just such an interesting commodity, because social media and the internet has now made that available to everybody in so many different ways that they can create these niches out there that serve different. If you want to be doing punk rock, you could do or punk weather. You could probably find somebody out there that's offering some kind of a commentary on that. A little bit of information here and there. Alex, I see Alex nodding his head up and down. It's changed a lot, Alex. To give you a perspective, a guy that's in his 70s now. I'm going to be 71 in July 8th. It's fun to look back on how the music industry and the relationship between, in fact, I think it's one of the questions come up, so I don't want to destroy the question, but the relationship between record companies and radio stations, as Jeff was just saying, has changed dramatically over the years to, it's almost been like this. It's kind of like this way, and then all of a sudden, bump, and then boop, and it's like, it wasn't a linear thing. It sort of bounced around. Now, Jeff, you mentioned two formats, which I'm interested in, country and Christian, two formats that have been around a long time, but have a huge loyal following, which hasn't changed. I'd say that, CHR, Top 40, AC, all those things, they've morphed and changed and evolved a little bit here and there. But country and Christian seem to me to be stalwarts formats out there. Although country has broadened its appeal. I mean, when you have Beyonce or whoever else is doing country music, how's that changed over the years as a format goes? I'm just testing you here.
I think the first change I saw was in the early '90s when what they called the new country came along with the group that brought us Garth Brooks and Reba McEntire, Alan Jackson, and that group, where country became less of the fiddle steel guitar and more of a regular electric guitar. It was a seismic shift then, and a lot of people didn't like it, but it was there to stay, and it has changed the base of the industry forever. If you think back to a Tammy Wynette versus a Shania Twain, there was a seismic shift there in the sonic sound of country radio. But I think the reason that it stays, or several reasons, country radio is a big tent party, and everybody's invited in, including Post Malone coming in. You mentioned Beyonce, who didn't fare as well as Post, and I have some theories on that if we want to get into that later. But it's a big tent party. The artists are very inviting. The artists will do things. I mean, there's the story of Garth Brooks at CMA Fest when he was just starting, signing autographs for like 27 or 8 straight hours. It's not to that ridiculous part anymore, but they still spend a lot of time. They welcome in their fans. CMA Fest is a perfect example of it, which just happened recently in Nashville. And Christian, I mean, they're both, I think, the beneficiaries of partially what's happening in our world right now. Our world's more divided than it's ever been. I don't think anybody, whichever side you're on, you're not going to disagree that we're more divided than ever. They're very comfortable. They don't really push an agenda too much other than, a red, white, and blue, all-American country format and Christian, But I think that's a lot of it is that it benefits from how the world is right now. It's a comfortable place to be.
What's the big hot format right now? If you wanted to start a format on it, let's say Mark bought another radio station. I can see now crying. And he had to come up with a format that would reach a pretty good cross-section of people all the way from the Delmarva Peninsula all the way through, I guess, Salisbury is an interesting market. Mark, there's 40 radio stations in that market? That probably makes it one of the biggest markets with the lowest market numbers. But you have a lot of people out there.
42 stations, I think it's market.
That's a lot of radio stations to program against. So I'm going to reach out to Jeff and say, if he wanted to have another format and he wanted to run music, what would be the low hanging fruit for him?
I think it would be in the classic hits realm in that area.
Yes.
Maybe a little broadening out of it, but classic hits is. It's again goes back to what we were just talking about with the comfortable factor. I mean, to me, I'll take it back just a little bit further and make it a country analogy here. But the reason I love classic country is because to me that puts me back in the back seat of my mom and dad's car, going to grandma's house on Sunday and hearing Johnny Cash and Marty Robbins and all those songs that were popular to them. I love those now because it transports me back there. And I see that happening a lot with classic hits and classic rock in that they're comfortable. My own boys are an example, 25 and 29. They love Styx. They love Journey because, again, they heard that in our car as we were taking them on vacation and going places. So I don't think you can go wrong right now with classic hits. There's always going to be the sonic question of how far, what the center of the format is and how far it can go, because once you get into the 90s, the sonic difference between the music is such that sometimes it makes it a little hard to make it all fit. But I think that is really the home run right now, and it seems to be bearing out, and it seems to be bearing out even in the 3-minute qualifier with Nielsen.
Yeah, the format-wise, it's charting very well in major markets like Philadelphia. I think WMGK is peaking out against everybody else playing classic rock. and it's interesting. Alex, let me jump over to you for a second to let people know how they should reach out to us and ask questions now, because we've changed things up a little bit. So let me get a little business out of the way before we continue the questions going to Jeff.
Absolutely. I'm sure some people that are on the stream now will want to post some questions and ask them directly to our guest, Jeff Lynn. So if you want to post questions on the show or chat with us live right now, what we need you to do is go to your web browser and type in ask.thelastangrydj.com. That's ask.thelastangrydj.com, and just log in there. Probably the quickest way to log in is just by punching in your cell phone. There's numerous ways you can log in there. Whatever's easier, log in by email, log in by phone, log in with Twitter or Google. So it gives you a bunch of different options. Once you get in, it's super easy. You can just post your question once you type in your name and location, and we'll get them on the show. And of course, you can chat with us live. So once again, that's ask.thelastangrydj.com. Back to you, Mitch.
Yeah, and the device he's talking about is what we call Mukana. It's just a great way to confer back and forth. It's like the modern day equivalent of a request line, except it's a two-way street here. We're able to get a lot more information back and forth. And I promise you, the 2-3 minutes you might take to fill out your name and address and where you are is just there so that we can keep track of things and keep it all neat and tidy. So Mukana is a great way to ask questions about the program. And speaking of which, let me jump over to Mark, who has, I think we have a couple questions there standing by for Jeff.
We do. And Jeff, we have a question here for you. Is the only way to have a profitable radio station with good listenership to play well-known big hits? Or can niche vertical solutions exist like only a hard rock station featuring indie bands?
Very good question, and very difficult to answer because a lot of it's going to depend on your market. But I think, where we are challenged right now is that, the Spotifys and the Pure Plays and even YouTube music videos are making things available so much quicker to the audience that if we're not doing music discovery, we're going to be left behind. So yes, I think there's a place for it. I think it depends on the market, but you can, I think, get in there and make a difference. I even think there's a place for local music to be involved in there. So again, I'm just going to go back to saying it depends on the market. If you're saturated with classic rock and you want to do another rock station that does that, you're probably not going to do that well. Our alternative stations seem to do really well with that kind of approach. But it's interesting that, I hear stations that are saying, here's new music from, fill in the blank, fill in the format, and I know the listeners are shaking their head going, no, that was 3 singles ago. We're down the road 4 other songs with Morgan Wallen. So you have to be careful with that. But I think if you stay out ahead of it, you can do yourself a favor, but you always have to come back to the center of what you're doing. You can't violate your listener expectation. So if you're going to go out on that limb, come back with a solid hit beside it and on either side of it. But yes, I believe it can work.
That's a good answer. And to put it into perspective, back in the old days, the way that people found out about music when there was no internet was you go to your local radio station. You'd listen to your top 40 station, and the DJ would say, hey, here's the latest hit from Procol Harum or whatever. And you would hear about a song, and you would listen to it and say, oh, that's great, and you go right to the music store. Today, it's all different. It's a completely different beast. And the influence that you get for making decisions is much faster, much broader, and more interesting. And I saw Alex nodding his head while Jeff was answering that question, because I think when you said indie and local bands, I think Alex, I think you need to make a comment, Alex, because I know this is something that's near and dear to your heart.
Well, it's something that I've always been curious about, or whether or not you can play. Now, there are radio stations that I listen to that kind of mix it up, and they'll throw in lesser known, more local bands here, and especially focusing on Canadian content, which I think is important. But that's always been my question is, I don't know how, I guess I have my doubts as to how profitable a radio station could be. Like, how big of a market would there be for bands that are not, say, the Led Zeppelins of the world, or that type of stuff, or AC/DC, or Just like name any big popular rock band from the 70s, 80s, that kind of stuff. So, it's hard, I think, in 2025. I think if you were to start out from scratch for a radio station right now, of course, the safe route is to go with the classic hits, like you said, Jeff. But I don't know if I'd be able to do a radio station now with the type of stuff that I would be. And look, I love all that stuff too. I absolutely love classic rock. I grew up with that. A lot of people always say my tastes are from someone who was born in a different generation. But I think it's also important to also try to discover new artists as well and give those people a chance, right, to be discovered.
I'm
Jeff,
not sure
your comments to that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure you could make a total living on it, but I think it can be your secret sauce to some stations. And I'm going to go back. I had a conversation earlier this week with Christy Taylor, who is the music director for The End in Seattle, a great alternative radio station. And they also do this, and she called it their secret sauce, is to include these. Well, and Seattle's always had a great music reputation, but she's talking about how, if you advocate for them, they advocate back. So if you reach out and embrace them, yes, it's not going to be a full format, but it certainly can be a secret sauce for you, and you can get those people advocating for you as well. When they do a artist of the month or an artist of the week from Seattle, they put it in full rotation. Not just, a spin overnight here or there. They put it in full rotation. So again, secret sauce.
Yeah, and it's also the market because Seattle's a very popular music community for indie bands and things like that. So, ever since going back to Nirvana and groups like that, it's been very strong. So it's good to see that door is open, because I think it leaves some hope for those that are always searching for a little variety. Back again, here's the old guy stories again. Back when I was on a top 40 radio station, I did it because that was the way to make money in the radio business, and most radio stations were playing 40 or 50 songs maybe in order to be successful. That was back at a time when we were more concerned with what the latest Arbitron was showing, how long people were listening, et cetera, et cetera. It was a battle royale between us and maybe the station across town that was playing the same music basically, but somehow you had to make yourself more reasonably accessible as a radio station, especially when everybody's playing the same stuff. So that's not the same scenario nowadays. Can you paint us a little bit of a picture for how stations compete in a marketplace these days? I mean, does that fall into your purview of?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can certainly give you my thoughts on it.
Sure.
The thing is, attention spans are so short. And it looks like the average tune-in is somewhere between 3 and 6 minutes. So if you're going to grab somebody for 3 or 6 minutes, you better be playing a hit record. And I just wrote a column recently about music separation in the country format, where I was advocating with Morgan Wallen, for instance, who just dropped his second album of 30-plus songs that everybody's consuming because the streaming data will show you that. Play a Morgan Wallen song every 12 to 14 minutes on the radio station. Now that takes, Mitch, that's even tighter than the top 40 days that you were talking about. I mean, we're talking about 4 times an hour playing a Morgan Wallen record. And you have to do that, and you have to be there putting that best product forward for those short tune-ins, and hope that you get them long enough to get that 3-minute qualifier for PPM. And that's how I think people are tightening up their list. They're going a much smaller list. I think the average, I would say, for top 40 right now, for the good ones, somewhere lives around 112 records total. Wow. And it kind of started, this short artist separation started when Taylor Swift was so hot a few years ago. And you couldn't go wrong playing Taylor every, again, 12 to 14 minutes. So I think that's all shrinking in hopes of grabbing and getting that attention, and maybe getting it for just a little bit longer, but also to get, you're not worried anymore about time spent listening. It just doesn't factor in anymore. It's occasions of listening. So if I can get you for an extra 2 occasions a day, that's going to make all the difference in the world, as opposed to trying to compete in the TSL world.
So time spent listening, TSL, that's we used to do it on the basis of quarter hours
Right.
The amount of time that somebody listened within 1 quarter-hour period, and you got a point if it crossed into another. So if it was in 1 quarter, let's say, top of the hour until the 15 after, that's 1 point. But if you just got them into the next quarter hour, that's 2 points to your rating. So people aren't playing the ratings game quite the same way, are they?
Not the same way. No. Again, it's occasions, and I've seen it. I've seen data on it that shows that extra 1, 2, or 3 occasions a day, if you can get it, that's golden, and that's way better than than playing the old TSL game.
And the fact that portable people meters have revolutionized the way ratings are done via Nielsen and Arbitron. Back in the old days, they filled diaries out. In fact, some places still do, where they actually have to keep track of what station they were listening to, who was in the room, what you're listening to, what was the station call letters, what was their slogan. With these little beeper devices that they have attached to their waist or whatever, would pick up a watermark signal on the radio station transmitting. And those are pretty much working okay, aren't they?
Yeah, they're both. I mean, both systems are flawed. It's always going to be flawed, and there's always going to be problems with it. I've always thought I've never been a proponent of the 6+ measurement in the PPM markets. I don't think that that's legitimate. It gets the numbers up for Nielsen, but I mean, 2554 is still what people are buying, or 18 to 49. I don't know anybody that's going out and buying a 7-year-old that they're marketing to. So 6+ seems to be kind of silly to me. They're both flawed. I mean, if you remember in the diary days, and for the markets that are still in diary, we did things like fridge magnets. And the reason we did fridge magnets was because people went in on Sunday and they went, oh, geez, what did I listen to all week? And they sit down at the kitchen table and started filling out this diary. And if they looked at the refrigerator, hopefully that unaided recall, you saw your format or your station, and they went, oh, yeah, I did listen to them. So it's flawed. I think that, Nielsen, I'm not going to pick on them too hard here, but they've always had, and the predecessor Arbitron, they've always had trouble getting a good panel that they didn't have to wait too much one way or another, especially with young males. So if they can't get the panel solid for a month, how can we be confident they have the panel solid for a year or two when they strap a meter on someone?
And what Jeff is talking about too is that if you had a format that really was targeted 18 to 25-year-old men, for example, Arbitron had a hard time back in the day of getting enough of in-tab returns on their diaries of people within that age. So the weighting factor, meaning the actual weight that if they had 200 in-tab diary fillers against thousands for other age groups, there was all kinds of weird mathematics going on that made it very complicated. So is that stuff going away? I guess it's not quite as complicated as it used to be? Or
I think it is every bit as complicated as it used to be. I mean, you can see in some markets, I mean, I've seen where like one male in that age demo you just talked about counted as 5. I mean, the weighting was just ridiculous that one person can count as 5, and that is not a real measurement of the market. So PPM has helped, but it's still not perfect.
Sure, we could get the people from Nielsen in here to defend themselves, but
right.
It's a system we have, and we do the best we can. And I won't. I guess the statute of limitations run out. I used to time warp on WFIL and do other nasty little tricks to try to get extra quarter-hour points, but that was what I used to do. Mark, do we have some more questions that we can bounce in here?
Sure, we do. And regarding the whole system of ratings in radio, I know that the market we're in is still a diary market, so it's not using any of the electronic systems yet. But I've also heard that Nielsen has dropped listing those stations in their ratings that don't subscribe to the Nielsen system, which makes it kind of a strange way to rate stations. But have you heard similar things?
Oh yeah, they've started doing that probably 3 or 4 years ago now, and even what they give to the trades, what they give to us to publish, and it was the same way at All Access. You know, you could be the number one station in town, and of course you're only going to be allowed to publish a 12+ or a 6+ depending on the market, but you could be the number one station in town, and when the trades publish that, you're not going to see it, and you're not going to see it in the book. I mean, there are several good examples of stations that just don't subscribe and don't show up, and that's really bad. But I mean, there's not much you can do about it. It's their game.
Let's keep the questions coming, Mark. Any more you can hit us with?
Sure. What was your inspiration getting you into radio? Did you have a DJ that you used to listen to that gave you the idea of radio?
I did. Well, I grew up in southeast Iowa, so we got all the Chicago AMs, and of course, like everybody at my age, I was a devotee to the big 89 WLS, and loved listening to Lou Jack and Tommy and all those guys. But I was also fortunate, and this was what was really cool. I mean, it's one thing to listen to those and go, boy, I like what they do, and it probably would be fun. But the town I grew up in was about 8,000 people. And it had a really, at the time, I'm not so sure now, it doesn't matter, but at the time they had a really, really great radio station. And they brought some amazing people through there. And I remember back in junior high, and this may ring a bell to you, it may not, Bruce Vidal worked there. Mm-hmm. Bruce went on to work at KISS FM in Los Angeles. He was the fill-in for Rick Dees in the morning and on Top 40. Jerry Dean worked in the afternoon, a guy who's here in Vegas now still. Went on to have a great programming career, programmed KLUC in Vegas for more than a decade. These guys were on that radio station. And I remember, it was a time when, and I don't think we're quite there where we used to be, but it was a time when the DJs in town, especially in those small towns, they were local celebrities. We thought they were cool, and we would follow them around and, go up to them and talk to them in a restaurant because they were cool. And Bruce and Jerry, those guys were always so nice, and they really got me interested. So I started showing up at the radio station, and I would just sit and watch them. And I finally remember Lee Weiss was the manager, the OM there, and he came to me one day and he said, okay, we've had enough of this. You got to quit hanging around here. And it broke my heart instantly. and he goes, so we're going to have to put you to work. So they put me to work, and, back in the day, somebody had to sit there and run the church tapes on Sunday morning. So I started doing that, and I got inside and never looked back.
That's a great story to tell because it's almost identical to how I got into radio. Now, I'm still in my old original hometown, but there was a small AM radio station that ruled the airwaves here called WAMS, or 1380 WAMS. And it was the only station in town in a market, I guess at the time the market was market number 72, something like that, AM station. And I did exactly what you're talking about. I would hang out at the station when the guys would say, hey, we want some lunch. Could somebody go for some burgers?
Oh, yeah.
I'd go for the burgers. If I had to deliver the survey to the printers, because we didn't have internet back then, I'd jump in the WAMS cruiser and drive over. And I ran the tapes on Sunday morning. We called it Sunday morning drive. To me, I would have paid them to have done all that, but that was my introduction to radio. So it's the same thing.
And the first time I got to crack the mic and read a PSA, I mean, that was just the best thing ever on Sunday morning.
Isn't that cool? I mean, I remember I used to call my buddies up that were still in high school, as I was, and I'd say, I'm running the tapes at WAMS right now. And they go, no, because it was like the superstar station. And I'd say, yeah, listen, and I'd take the pot for the John Borders and Powerline. I'd go, and then turn it back up again. And then at the top of the hour, I got to say, it's 12 o'clock at WAMS. Temperature is 89 degrees. And me, that little moment of publicity was
so
great.
Cool.
Except one time when they had a short circuit on the remote, and I had to hit the remote to bring in the local church broadcast. And I said, now these inspiring words from Aldersgate United Methodist Church, and I reached over and hit the button, and it was electrified. And went, holy shit!
Oh, no.
And I just sat there, and I said, this is it. My career is over. Just watched the hotline. And I told my boss on Monday, who was Bob Rich and Seymour Duck, I said, Bob, I cursed on the air. And he said, what happened? I told him, and he said, nobody's listening then, anyhow. So everybody has a story they can tell. And Alex you've talked about this often, is how do people get introduced to radio? Because I don't think it's as accessible today like it was for me and Jeff. Today, if you want to hang out at the radio station, there may be nobody there. It may all be RoboJock making things work. How do you get in the door? How do you get your foot in there? Because, everything's done by the internet. If you want food, you just do DoorDash.
I think it's very different now because now there are, 50 years ago, I don't think you really had these kind of schools that had these broadcast programs where you could graduate from and learn the craft, right? So a lot of people would just kind of get into the door and just learn the craft on the spot. You wouldn't get on the air necessarily right away, but you'd be a board op or something, or maybe you'd, I don't know, work in the mailroom or whatever. But now, like, people go to.
Did you just say mailroom? Is there such a beast?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I had to pick on you on that one.
You do odd jobs and that kind of stuff, but
yeah.
But now, of course, every school has a broadcast program that you can take, and it's usually a 2 or 3 year program, and that's how a lot of people find jobs. Is they go through some kind of apprenticeship program, and it's just a different. I think you kind of have to go to school now. Before people will really look at you in a lot of different types of industries, right? So, and you got
maybe so.
It's unfortunate because you got to spend a lot of money, right? You got to spend a lot of your own money on tuition to go through these programs, and then of course it's just kind of a gamble of whether or not you're going to get a job. And if you're going to get a job, they're all going to be low paying jobs anyways, and you're going to have to move around. And that's just part of the industry. So
let me jump over to Mark, because Mark, you own radio stations, and you're always looking for interns and people like that. How do you encourage local schools to send you some of their warm bodies?
Well, we work with the local schools to try and get internship programs going. We've constantly have ads out in the local media, trying to find salespeople, trying to find people to do board ops. So we're always looking for good people.
Okay, great. And while you're there, why don't you ask another question for us?
I can do that. And if you want to ask questions, go to ask.theangrydj.com. But our next question for you, Jeff, is what main thing broke the relationship between radio and the music industry?
What main thing broke it? I'm not totally convinced that it's broken, but it does have some issues. I think that the main thing that broke it was consolidation. And I hate to throw that grenade, but I think that was a lot of it, because you have, for instance, 160 reporting stations in the country format right now, media-based reporting stations. And probably 70% of those are controlled by one or two people. So the days of going to your local station, who may or may not be a reporter, and getting a record started and getting that kind of thing going, is really not so much there anymore. There are a few of them around still, and they do generally pretty well. But you're talking to one person for 50, 60 stations. So they're controlling so much of the chart. And if you get an ad for, XYZ company that has 60 reporters on that panel, you're done. And what happens then is they're strong-arming people to do shows, play their music festivals, play their gigs, their company gigs, I'll just say it, I guess. The iHeart Music Festival is an example. I don't want to pick on any one particular company because everybody does it, but it's taken everything and shrunk it so that the industry doesn't have to rely on radio per se like it did, where you had regional promoters for Warner and everybody else out working their territories. Now it's you get to the decision maker in the company and you're pretty much done. That has not helped things. That has taken and made it very hard to break artists in some cases, because the days of when you had some station that championed an artist and got behind it, It created a buzz. Now it's just different. It just doesn't happen that way. It's top down.
And it was also before social media, the internet, and vying for people's attention, because, as you said, the attention span of the average person is greatly reduced to the point where there's so many different decisions. But I remember when I used to be a young DJ and I was made music director at WFIL. I never paid for a drink after that or a meal or anything, and I just took it for granted. I was so green, I didn't realize what was going on here. I mean, at that time, they would woo you in any way they could. And on Mondays, when we sat down to talk to all the record promoters, there'd be a line out the door into the lobby, and all kinds of record promoter guys walking around, practicing their little spiel or whatever they were going to do. And independent guys. There was as many independent guys out there as there were guys repping Warner Brothers or Universal or whoever. So it was a whole different world back in the old days. But today it's not quite as glamorous, I guess is the best way to put it. And the whole idea of doing favors for the DJ that slipped your record on the air to help break it, it's so more tightly controlled nowadays than it used to be. And there was no money changing hands at this point, at least none that I can sniff out. And I never asked for it, never got it. But at the same time, at one point, the whole idea of the record companies doing favors for the radio stations went from helping out the DJ that was breaking songs on behalf of the record company to the radio station taking over that, and independent guys out there that would manage that relationship between the record companies and the radio station, so that, like, for example, if I was going to do a broadcast at Disney Studios in Orlando, a quick phone call to Hollywood Records, and I'd have tickets to fly there and space to stay. That was the kind of relationship that we had with the record companies. I don't know if it's quite that easy anymore, because things have changed a little bit. Things are tighter for everybody, but is it? It's not the same. I mean, I don't even ask you the question. It's different, and as you said, it's a different relationship.
Well, it changed dramatically with the Elliot Spitzer deal in the I don't remember what year that was, but Elliot Spitzer, the Attorney General of New York, I believe at the time, was working on payola stuff, and it really changed with the consent decree that followed that. Is it still out there? Yeah, it's still out there, and it's just in certain different ways. There's still the conversation of, hey, can you come do this event for me? And, well, yeah, I can, and I hope you're going to do the right thing. Do the right thing means I hope you're going to add the record and play it before my artist gets to town. But there's no, it's still there, but it lives deep, deep in the shadows.
Yeah, we did a Helping Hand Marathon every year at WFIL. I remember that, who's going to headline this year? And they said, well, let's give John Lennon a call to see if we can get him out. Of course, John showed up, and it's like, I'm sure he didn't do it just because he was a super nice guy, which he was. But, it was just, there's a lot of pressure applied indirectly, if for anything else. So nowadays that would be a whole different ballgame, but maybe a little bit the same. It was funny for me because I got out of radio from WFIL in the late 70s and sort of stayed away from it for a while, then got back in to help out a local station here. And I was on for about 3 years doing the morning show. And I just, all the dynamics were totally changed and different. And it was very, very interesting to see how things got done. But it's like we can pick on radio, and we use that nasty word of payola. Not really around anymore because the rules have been clearly outlined by the FCC and other organizations. But it's interesting to see how things change. But it's not that much different than your local oil heating company working with a distributor or something, and him giving some incentives to him to bring his product into the marketplace. It's the way things get done. It's the way capitalism works.
I had an uncle that used to run grocery stores, and it was amazing to me that somebody would come in and drop off, well, here's a VCR, and I sure would like to have that end cap next week, back when VCRs were still a thing. I'd like to have that end cap, or here's this. It's the same thing.
Yeah, people doing people favors. It seems that the more you, it was funny. We wouldn't get yelled at. This is probably going back to the '90s, early '90s. You could do things like mention records or record companies or organizations that were helping you out doing things. As long as you logged it in as commercial matters. So if you had the log, you could say, if I just happened to say, hey, I had lunch at Arby's today, and boy, that was a tasty sandwich, and yada yada yada. As long as you logged it on the log, it was legit, even though I was getting free lunches or things like that. So that's an interesting part of the.
A little bit in the promotion side of that. If a radio station gets a flyaway somewhere, or they get extra concert tickets or something, the promotional announcement has to clearly say provided by XYZ Records, and as long as you do that and keep it above board and announce it, you're okay. But it's when you don't do that, and somebody puts a little of it in their own pocket, that's where it becomes a big problem again.
Yeah, when people are obvious about it, like, sometimes, even when I was on the air again in the 90s, where we would ask the record companies for favors, it was for something that would enhance the radio show, like to go to Disney to be able to do the broadcast in MGM studios. That's a legitimate use of trade, if you want to call it that, or barter, or, promotional consideration. It was helping. But to have an all expense paid trip to the Hawaiian Islands, maybe not quite so much good the benefit of the radio. I think you'd have a hard time promoting that, even if you checked in live from the your hotel room at the King Kamehameha. It was just funny how that worked. Mark, do we have any more questions we can jump in here?
We do have more questions. I just want to say to go to ask.thelastangrydj.com to ask more questions. And here we go. What is AI's role in broadcast right now? Is it an existential threat? How can it be leveraged to make our own jobs more efficient? And can we look at the upsides?
You have to look at the upside. And if you don't, you're going to be left behind. It's just that simple. Now, I talk to a lot of people. I ask a lot of that same question: how are you using AI in your daily routine? I get a lot of I'm using it for an idea starter. My salespeople are using it to write copy. I'll give you an example in my own world. I was stuck last week, and I needed a column, and I couldn't think what I wanted to write about. I put into ChatGPT, give me 5 ideas for country radio columns. I got 5 great ideas. So it's very good at that. I think the jury's still out on things like AI Ashley, if you remember that, in Portland, where Alpha tried to do a whole show with a whole midday show through AI by cloning the girl Ashley's voice. They came off that. I know that there's a company in Cleveland that is doing that now and trying to perfect it, and they probably will, because for some reason their name escapes me, but Daniel Anstagni runs the company, and he's very brilliant, and he's very ahead of most of this stuff, so he will get it right. I'm quite sure of it. Futuria Media is the name of the company. It just came to me, but so yeah, I think a lot of it is still in that figuring it out part. I think it can be really good for social media. I've been playing around with a video creation AI device, which I think will help, but it's going to be there. So get used to it and figure out how to use it, because it's just not going to go away. I worry that it will lead to a day where you have one person, again, going back to a company, one person programming the format for the entire company, and we won't need PDs. Now, don't get alarmed. I don't think we're anywhere close to that yet, but I think we will get there, because you can generate that music list through AI, and you can push it out and probably have cloned voices that will sound just as good as live voice trackers. But the majority, to answer the question that I hear right now, is people are using it for idea starters and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a tool if you choose to use it as a tool to make your job easier. But the bottom line is, here's my emphasis on, everybody knows my opinion on AI, is that if you have a job that can be done by an AI, it will be done by an AI. It's just a matter of when. Mm-hmm. And if there's an opportunity for a company to save money by incorporating the AI, you can be sure they're going to bring it in, because a lot of people operate their big conglomerates that are broadcast entities, not for the benefit of the employees, but for the benefit of their stockholders. They have a fiduciary responsibility to make money, and that's okay. That's the world we live in. But you just have to pick your application for what kind of job you want to do. It's like I've said this before. When people, that's my little pay attention. They used to say, hey, when you're going to college, you should become a coder or a programmer. That's the ticket. Let's do that. And nowadays, I don't think that's so easy to be a graduate of programming computers and things like that, because AI does that so well. Alex, why don't you give us a little insight how easy it is now to go to ChatGPT, if you need a little Python script or C# program. You don't have to know the program anymore. You just have to know how to ask the query.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, because I use, for me, I use ChatGPT every single day, and I find it incredibly useful, very much in the sort of the same way that Jeff is experimenting with it to come up with conceptual ideas for things, or solve problems, or even something as simple as like, can you plan a trip for me? It is really, really good at that. Like, let's say I'm going to some town in some remote place. Give me 3 or 4 different great restaurants to go to. Give me some suggestions on great places, a bed and breakfast place or something to stay at. And I've heard of people actually following the itinerary that ChatGPT had laid out, and they said it was actually a really great trip. So can it make mistakes? Yes. Will it continue to make mistakes? Yes, but it's getting better and improving every single time. I've also experimented with ChatGPT, some of the newer deep reasoning models, where you can give it a really complex problem and it will really, really take its time to chew on that problem, but come up with just incredible information, and also even for solving coding problems, asking it to write code. It's getting better at that type of task all the time. So I find it incredibly valuable, and I'm finding that this technology is making its way into the tools that I use every day to edit video and produce video content. For example, like being able to take our show and transcribe what we're saying into actual text, and also be smart enough to know that when Mitch is talking, that's actually him, and it can separate his voice from my voice and give me a transcription of what we said on the show. So stuff like that, and I think that we're going to continue to see an erosion of, I think, a lot of low-paying entry-level jobs where people are doing rote work, which, let's face it, people don't really want to be doing those jobs anyway. I think that's the first stuff, like getting cut right away. I think this technology is going to get rid of a lot of those types of jobs, whether we like it or not. I think that's just.
I think they should force AI that if it's going to do a radio announcer, it has to be a guy like this. Hey, everybody, it's 6:25 in the city. It's going to be another day to scatter the wax and splatter the platters. Make it talk like a yucky DJ, so that at least we know. That's an AI DJ. So we're all good with that. I know I'd get a smile out of the other guys, because they're always telling me that whenever somebody says, "Well, what does an AM radio guy sound like?" they immediately jump into that "everybody" voice, and I'm just like saying, "I never talked like that on the air. That's not my style." But apparently that's what the movies think you are, or whatever else. So let's put it on AI to try to figure it all out. AI is here. It's here to stay. It's the cat's out of the bag. It's going to be getting better and better at what it does. It's not going to hallucinate as much. It's not going to mispronounce things. I still would say that if I was hosting a classic hits radio show, that I would be far more relatable than any AI could do it. I just absolutely challenge it, and I'll do it. I'll work for free just long enough to show that I can do it 10 times better than any AI can. And hell, I'm 71 years old next week, so there we go. What are you going to do? You, Jeff, are they taking you kicking and screaming into the next century of AI? No, they're not.
It's here. Embrace it. or you're going to be a dinosaur and you're going to be left behind. You've got to jump on right now. So
embrace it,
learn it,
or learn how to use it and be part of the. It's just sort of like supplying bullets to a nasty war, the way it goes.
It's kind of like Alexander said. If you the low hanging fruit, you're going to be gone. So if you know how to use it, and you're an expert with it or keeping up with it, who's going to go? The person who kicks and screams and doesn't want to do it, or the person who knows how to make money with it and uses it?
I think it's also a wake up call to all of us, and this is why I'm somewhat fascinated. Also, I've made a
are you implying that I take a lot of naps? I'm sorry.
No. I'm just saying I think for me, I've been very, very deliberate in changing my way of thinking from the extreme case of, oh no, it's coming to take my job, to embracing it, learning about it, like what you're saying, Jeff, and trying to find other ways of diversifying my own skill sets, knowing how to make myself more efficient, but also just broadening my knowledge. And I think that's the key thing, is you can't be complacent. Any industry, these tools are going to be there. They're going to get better, and I think you need to stay on top of what is going on in the industry with this stuff, with large language models and AI. And you just need to find ways of diversifying your knowledge and always be useful to people. And I think you're right, Jeff, that also someone that really knows how to use these tools and how to use and knows how to leverage them properly to make their own job better is really going to be more successful, as opposed to the people that just are so afraid of even looking at this stuff. I think those people are just going to be left behind. And
I'm left behind.
I know that's not what people don't want to hear that, but they're going to get left behind.
I see myself. This is my future. Spill in aisle 3. Today's blue light special is. That's where I'm going to go, and then that'll get replaced too at some point. Thanks a lot, Alex. I'm not sure what I'm. Let's say we get all this free time on our hands because we're no longer having to do all these things. AI does it for us. What are we going to do with our time? How are we going to make money in order to be able to be part of the society? That's my concern, is where are we going with all this? No takers?
No taker here. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely changing the landscape, and I wish I had that crystal ball.
And what happens when AI starts creating the music that's being played?
Well, that's already happening. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, well, that upsets me as a musician. That it's still pretty,
we finally got a hot spot. All right, way to go.
I'm not looking forward to that, but I will say that I think there's a bigger discussion maybe to be had too about. And I think we're very far away from it, but things like having discussions about universal basic income, like how do we take care of each other as a society? Because I think long term out, like if you look at 50 years from now, a lot is going to change in the next 50 years. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be out of work. So we're going to have I think we're going to have a lot of situations where I think we're going to be put into a hot spot as a society with our economy. I think there's going to be at some point, there's going to be an emergency where the government, we're all going to have to step in and say, things are out of control. Like society's falling apart, because of AI. We're going to have to figure out how can we make sure that everyone has basic human fundamental rights taken care of, like access to electricity, access to internet, access to food, to be able to put food on the table, have those basic needs covered. I think that we're going to have a serious conversation about.
Wow, that is a dystopian future.
From the music standpoint, if I could just throw in real quick, what
please.
Really bothers me is, I working in Nashville, I made some good friends that are songwriters, some prolific songwriters, and then somebody goes to Suno and cranks something out that that they do in 30 seconds, and it has the lyrics, the bridge, and everything else. I mean, it's not totally there and prolific right now, but it sure could get there, and I really hate to see that.
I got a job suggestion. Become a intellectual property lawyer. because I think that's
Right.
where a lot of battles are going to be fought, because they still don't know how to deal with it. So, as that looms ahead. But the other thing is, as people have more leisure time, they're going to have more time for leisure activities and the arts and culture. At least they do it on Star Trek and Star Wars, maybe. But maybe we're going to get back to music because we have more free time to enjoy it and analyze it and look at it. By the way, a little tip: make sure if you're searching around YouTube, go to Rick Beato. He does a great job of analyzing music trends like this, also classic hits and songs, and I just like the way the guy talks. Rick Beato on YouTube is what to search for. I'd love to have him on the show, but a good time for me to tell everybody, why do we want people to push that subscribe button? So people like Rick Beato will say, hey, that's a happening program. Let's get on there. So hit that subscribe button and help us out so that we can get more and more people out there to pay attention to us. A real fun show. We appreciate, Jeff, you being here and talking to us about the music industry and how it relates to broadcasting. I think it's a pet subject of ours. We kind of run the gamut of different things and how it affects. And as you can see, what's happening to radio could also happen to other things. And AI is sort of that disruptive technology that we like to speculate about. I think we're all doomed. It's either going to be AI or a giant asteroid crashing into Nashville. Something is going to get us somehow, or another flu virus of some kind. So, Jeff, thanks for being with us. I greatly appreciate your input. And Ray Quinn was correct in saying that you are a very interesting guy. We should be staying in touch with you. How do they reach out to you? How do they find out more about Barrett Media and what you do?
Yeah, we're barrettmedia.com, and I am Jeff, Jeff, at barrettmedia.com for email. So hit me up there, and I'd be happy to talk more. I really, I'm honored that you asked me to do this. I'm honored that my old friend Ray Quinn suggested it, and this has been fun. I've enjoyed this a lot.
Good. Make sure you tell your friends about us and make sure they subscribe.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Absolutely.
always an important thing. And Alex, how do people reach out to us in the meantime before next show?
Yeah, absolutely. They can reach out to us. There are numerous ways to do that. And one of the ways that you can do that is join our Discord community. I'm going to leave a QR code floating right above there, above my left shoulder, right there on the screen.
How do you do that?
I know. How do I do that? It's like magic. So if you scan that with your camera app on your phone, that will let you into our Discord community. That's the best place to talk with us after the show. We've got that server broken up into different channels, so there's different topics. We can talk about everything. We can talk about the show, but we can also talk about other stuff in the industry. We can talk about TV shows and movies. There's all sorts of stuff to talk about.
By the way, Soylent Green is people.
And also, you can reach out to us on social media. We're at The Last Angry DJ on all platforms: Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok. We're pretty much everywhere. We do also have an email address. You can reach out to us the old-fashioned way. If you go to thelastangrydj.com/contact, there's a contact form there. And also, we'd like to thank our friends over at Boinks Software for providing Mimo Live. That's the program we're using to produce the show. We wouldn't be able to do this show at this level of quality without them. So thank you to Boinks Software and, of course, Oliver Breidenbach at Boinks for all of your support over the last year. It's been absolutely amazing. And that is pretty much it. Also, if you'd like to find this show as a podcast, we are available as an audio-only podcast for your morning commute. You can find it in any podcast app. We're on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and Stitcher, Spotify, and Google as well. You can ask your smart device to play our podcast, and that should work for you as well. And like Mitch said, youtube.com/@TheLastAngryDJ. That's our channel page, and you'll find a link there on the channel to our question and answer system, which is Mukana, where it's still a new thing. So we'd ask that you'd go there. You can post questions 7 days a week.
Wow,
starting on Monday. Starting on Mondays, you can, so we reset it after this show on Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is when the show live streams. But on Monday and every other day, you can post questions 7 days a week by going to ask.thelastangrydj.com. And that's about it, Mitch.
That's a mouthful, Alex. I don't know how you do that all without a teleprompter, which impresses the hell out of me. So you have a future in broadcasting. Unfortunately, it was 20 years ago. So good luck with that idea.
Oops.
Go back in the time machine.
I slept in, Mitch. I slept in.
Oh, okay. There we go. Mark, what do you think? Did you learn anything today from
great
our
show. Great guest. It was fun.
Thank you.
Good show.
Appreciate that. Mark Giuliani, he's the Bhagwan of broadcasting down in Lower Delaware. Anybody get that reference? Bhagwan? Okay. Sorry. Another reference that people will look it up. Look it up. That's what Google's for. I want to thank you all for being here. And, of course, as always, I want to thank Arby's from keeping my stomach from rumbling with the meats that they have. They got a great, it's like a Angus Philly cheesesteak. That's awesome. I tried it out on Friday. In fact, when I get done here, I'm rolling on out to Arby's on the Kirkwood Highway here in Wilmington. So they have a great app. Check them out, Arby's. Thank you for sponsoring our show. And we'll be back again next week with the Broadcast Buffins, talking about all the things that we love that are near and dear to our heart as we were. And Jeff, you're now a member of the family, as we like to say. So that means that you can come back again as a returning champion, or you can make suggestions on some of the guests that we have on. We love, we always like little inspiration. And there we go. So we could get AI to channel some past radio disc jockey that's passed on and have them come on. Wouldn't that be great to bring somebody back that's no longer with us? And I don't even want to guess because some of them are still alive, and I'll say, what about Robert W. Morgan? I think he's gone. But, how that goes. So anyhow, thanks so much for being here. It's the Last Angry DJ show, number 69. Thanks a lot. Be safe out there, whatever you're doing.